And welcome to another installment of Ben's Junk, the sub-series with no concept of the phrase small pleasures. Anyway, up until this point, each installment of Ben's Junk has been on my equipment. But I figured this time I'd shake it up a bit, and instead of looking at, say, a VCR or something, we'd be looking at something you'd be watching on that VCR. So what I've got here is a good chunk of my collection of, if you remember in the Tour of the Archive episode, if you've ever seen that, there's a brief segment in there of a box of maybe 8 or 9 videotapes, and I referred to it as my Cinema Snob box. Well, that box has grown, and it's no longer a box, it's a whole shelf now. And so I'm going to show you some stuff from that collection. And I've just been on a hot streak lately. I mean, I know I'm never going to discuss this stuff on Archive because I'm not a movie reviewer, but I just have this bad habit of picking up movies at the thrift store because I think they look weird or interesting or whatever, you know, or the sort of thing I would have seen languishing on a back shelf of a Blockbuster 20 years ago. So I admit it's become kind of a ever-growing part of my movie collection, and one that it has been kind of educational because I didn't really watch this sort of stuff growing up. It's only been in more recent years that I've been going back, and I guess it's just the Oddity archive guy in me, just having to see, just having that morbid curiosity. So some of this stuff is on Laserdisc, but the bulk of it, unsurprisingly, is on VHS. And some of this stuff is a little more mainstream, and some of it's just off the charts. So let's shut up, and let's start with the Laserdiscs, since there's only, I think, 6 of them. And this should be fairly well known to a lot of people out there. Twin Peaks. This is the first episode of the series, the TV series. And then we've got a 2-disc set of the fill-in-the-blank of the Damned movies from the 60s. A couple of Dr. Phibes movies, Vincent Price. And if you've seen Tour of the Archive, you've seen this, and you should not be surprised that Benny Boy has a Laserdisc of Elvira. And then here's one that I think it may even be out on Blu-ray now. The House on Sorority Row, but this is my old Rotted to Hell X-Rental Laserdisc, and I think this thing is from 83 or so. It's a fairly early Laserdisc. And Vestron. I don't have great luck with Vestron Laserdiscs. They seem to be very prone to rot. You probably saw this on Tour of the Archive, Penn and Teller Get Killed, which I think has come out on DVD now. I think I saw it on the Warner Archive DVD-R line that they have. And then another kind of mainstream-ish one that I've shown briefly before, Stay Tuned, which I saw at the time, and it warped my young brain accordingly. So that's all the Laserdiscs. Now let's get into the VHS stuff, and we'll start with some of the more boring stuff, like Rock and Roll High School Forever with Corey Feldman. And just because I love the old Nick Gilder song, I figured any movie called Hot Child in the City can't be all bad, and indeed it has some of Nick Gilder's music on it. And this one kind of looks like a Toxic Avenger sort of thing to me. I haven't watched it yet, but it's called The Being. I think this is from 85 or 86. And I have a lot of budget line VHS stuff, later issues, so unfortunately not always the originals. And this is one, this is on Star Maker, Ghostwriters. And then this one, I just could not say no to it. Don't Open Till Christmas. It just seems like the sort of thing that I would watch, especially around the holidays, you know. And this one I just picked up in the last week or so, and it's a nice big old clamshell, and it's Invisible Strangler. Haven't watched it yet, but it just looked too awesome to pass up. And you don't see a whole lot of the big box stuff anymore anyway. And speaking of budget line VHS, I have a few from Interglobal from sometime in the 90s, I think. The movies are a lot older. But here are 3 of those. Night of the Zombies, which I have yet to watch. I have watched this one, Satan's Cheerleaders, which was alarmingly boring. And another one that was kind of dull, Sisters of Death. Now, it's pretty well known that I collect off-air Betamax and VHS recordings and stuff, and one thing I just seem to keep coming across, especially on Beta, will be like HBO recordings of movies from Andy Sedaris. And I've watched a couple of them, and they don't really do a whole lot for me, but when I saw one of the movies just on its own in factory packaging, I just kind of had to pick it up. I guess I just felt a sense of duty. Malibu Express from 1984, which I don't recall being anything special. And another thing about VHS, and one thing that always interests me, is that when they first came out, they were expensive little suckers, and I think that was more to offset the rental industry that was coming along. So, you know, movies would be $80 at the time, and it always intrigues me when I see one that still has that as the suggested retail price, or with the sticker still on it. So Special Effects being one of those from Embassy with a $79.95 price tag. I have yet to watch that one. And these two were briefly discussed on Tour of the Archive, Scream Time, Lightning Video. Don't see those a whole lot. And this was $79.95. Somebody paid $80 for this, probably around 1982 or 83. And another one from Tour of the Archive, Demented, which is the only movie I have ever seen that opens with a gang rape scene, and it's the only movie I've ever seen in which somebody gets castrated with piano wire. So, you know, you gotta have those firsts. And moving on, this one has, from what I understand, a fairly famous catchphrase in it, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. I haven't watched that one all the way through yet. And I'm always interested when I see these movies that were kind of not softcore porn, but they were definitely out there to intrigue, I guess you could say. And this is one of them. This is called Basic Training, and I did not put the big B there. And this was a rental at some point. Most of these were, but this one still has a sleeve in it, so might have been from an adult video store. I haven't watched this one yet, and sometimes I find these things and they have Playboy bunnies, or was it Playmates, listed on them. Yeah, it tells you how much time I spend with that stuff, doesn't it? So it's, again, it's just me getting interested. It's going through that stuff that I couldn't watch as a kid. And here's a couple of recent acquisitions. Avenging Angel. I think you know all you need to know about this movie just by looking at the cover. And this one, I could absolutely not turn down a movie called Nice Girls Don't Explode. And I believe that's Wallace Shawn in here. I haven't watched this one yet, but it's kind of a little off from My Dinner with Andre, I'd imagine. And let's get to the last batch here. And this is one that has been previously seen in the Cinema Snob box. This is my Cinema Snob box, Separate Vacations, and it's another Lightning Video one. I have had this for a long time, and I still have yet to watch it. I really need to. And as far as the Cinema Snob goes, he's done an episode on this one, Devil Times 5, with a very young Leif Garrett in it. Which, yeah, Brad was right, it's not a terribly interesting movie. And this should look pretty familiar to any rock geeks, even mild rock geeks. Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. And I have tried to watch this one a couple times now, and I can never get more than halfway through it. Just, it doesn't work. And let's close things out today with a little shout out to a friend of ours here at the archive. The movie's called Beverly Hills Vamp from the late 80s, and our good friend Eddie Deason. And I have watched this, and you can see every joke coming from a mile away, but it's still fun. I was very pleasantly surprised with this movie. And I do want to give a little shout out to Eddie himself. He's been having some health problems lately, so get better soon, Eddie. And that just about does it for this one, so I'll see you again soon.